And then comes the Russell Wilson interview with Dan Patrick on Tuesday, and everything gets turned upside down. Peter King joins us for today's edition of Pro Football Talk live on Peacock, Sirius XM 211, NBCFC live on Peacock, Sirius XM 211, NBCFN, Sky Sports NFL, and wherever you get your podcast. Good morning, Peter. Crazy week, and we're going to try to make sense of all of it in the next 2 hours, if that's even possible.
Well, Mike, I'll tell you, I was surprised when I heard that because, as you well know, having interviewed Russell Wilson 400 times, which you have, has he ever once said anything even remotely slightly controversial or even remotely slightly challenging to the status quo in Seattle? Not really. And so that's why this one opened my eyes a little bit. It did surprise me, and it obviously says that Russell Wilson is not entirely happy with the status quo in Seattle.
And the follow-up on Wednesday from Dan Patrick was that the powers that be in Seattle not entirely happy with Russell Wilson's decision to break so far from character. I mean, this guy was the consummate company man his entire career. He was resented by teammates. He was made fun of by teammates for being the ultimate company man with the Go Hawks. Every time he talked to anybody, anything related to the team, it was the Go Hawks sign-off. And the sense that he was, like so many franchise quarterbacks over the years have been, Peter, a guy who is essentially the liaison to management who's in the locker room. He's the guy that's there on behalf of the coaching staff and the front office to make sure everyone does what they're supposed to do. And he broke from that in a very sudden and abrupt way. And I've said all week long, we're going to look back on that interview as the moment where what it means to be a franchise quarterback may have changed fundamentally in the NFL as we see this evolution become a revolution where quarterbacks behave far differently than they ever have.
Well, Mike, so much occurs to me when you say that. And I'll say this, that Tom Brady, I believe, amiably really affected what happened inside the Tampa Bay Buccaneers this year. No one truly believes that the Antonio Brown signing in late October was only the decision of management and the coaching staff. That was something that Tom Brady pushed very hard internally and basically told the organization, listen, give me the responsibility. I'll take the responsibility. I'll take care of Antonio Brown. And you know what, Mike? He did. And we don't know what happened inside the team the whole year, but Antonio Brown was a church mouse this year. There was never any problem with Antonio Brown. And then on the other side, there's another guy who's never in his entire college and pro football career been anything but overly praised, and that's Deshaun Watson. And, Mike, we're going to find out if Deshaun Watson can take the heat, because there's going to be some heat this offseason. And I believe there's going to be quite a bit of heat on Deshaun Watson, because I don't think the Houston Texans are going to go quietly into the night on this. I think they're basically going to draw the line and say, if you want to play football, you'll play for us. Now, will that last until the season? Who knows? I don't know. Nick Caserio's never had to do this either. Cal McNair's never had to do this. But I think you're right. We are in a different era of quarterbacking where a guy like Russell Wilson just doesn't sit back and take what he perceives are incorrect building blocks with this team.
And both of the things you mentioned, we can pull back into the Russell Wilson situation. First of all, the Texans have to be thrilled that this has dominated the cycle for the past few days because they've found a way to get the Deshaun Watson story off the top of the stack. And Antonio Brown, who was the other team that was most commonly linked? Yeah, the Ravens kind of, sort of, but the organization didn't really want him. And I'm not sure Lamar Jackson and Hollywood Brown really wanted him. They just were kind of saying what they were saying because they know him and they like him. Russell Wilson really wanted him. and the Seahawks made no effort to go get Antonio Brown. Not that Antonio Brown became Randy Moss 2007, but Antonio Brown was a good soldier, didn't create problems, contributed to the cause, and Tom Brady wanted him, and Tom Brady got him. And I think the Brady experience is what is causing so many of these other quarterbacks to say, why am I just going to act like an employee? Look at what Tom Brady did. They handed him the keys to the car in Tampa Bay, and now I want to have some of that same influence, and Russell Wilson is either going to get it from the Seahawks or he's going to get it somewhere else. I was curious after everything that's transpired over the past few days, Peter, whether or not at the core there is in Seattle the thing that happened several weeks back in Houston, the request for a trade. I'm told that that hasn't happened yet, but that all things are fluid still between Russell Wilson and the Seahawks. So I can't rule out that it's going to happen. I think maybe what Russell Wilson's trying to do is sufficiently agitate the Seahawks enough so they just trade him without a request. But I think that's the next thing to watch. Will this manifest itself in the Seahawks, not just hanging up the phone when people call, but actually having the conversation as to whether or not they'll trade Russell Wilson?
You know, I doubt they would right now, Mike, but I do think that I don't think that's out of the question. Just remember one thing. You know, John Schneider, learned at the, learned in the classroom of Ron Wolf. And Ron Wolf basically always had this attitude that, there's going to be firestorms, there's going to be problems, there's going to be issues. And, let the players play, let the coaches coach, and let me pick the players. That's the way it was in Green Bay. How would you like to be Aaron Rodgers, one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time, sitting at home, having no idea that Jordan Love that they were going to pick a quarterback in the first round this year? Now, did he get a call in the first round while this happened? Maybe. But he didn't know leading up to it that they were going to draft Jordan Love. And so that is sort of, if you look at the personnel guy, the pure personnel guy in the NFL right now, a guy like John Schneider, that is the way they run their team. Now, might he have to change? He might. But, Mike, I think this is about one other thing, too, okay? Dan Patrick interviewed Russell Wilson, right after he was in Miami, or in Tampa at the Super Bowl. Now, I didn't watch the game on Sunday night. I was at the game. And only occasionally do you really see stuff on TV. And at one point I looked up and there's Russell Wilson with his wife in Roger Goodell's box. And even though he's got a mask on, he looks absolutely glum. And I looked at that. And to me, the words on Russell Wilson's face were, I am miserable not making this game. And I look out on this field right now and I see Tom Brady. And Tom Brady goes into a place that has everything in place for him to win a championship. And why can't I be in a place like that? I've done everything this team has asked me to do. Why can't I be in a place like that? So look, we'll see what happens in the coming weeks, but I really think that is what is going through Russell Wilson's mind right now.
6 years after it was Tom Brady versus Russell Wilson, Brady with the Patriots, Wilson obviously still with the Seahawks. And, since that game, Super Bowl 49, the Seahawks haven't made it past the divisional round in the NFC playoffs. Meanwhile, every year but one, Brady at least gets to the conference championship game. He's won multiple additional Super Bowls since then. He's won 3 more since then, if my math is correct, and it rarely is. It's just amazing to think that this is where we are right now with these two guys. And the confidence / delusion / hubris of an NFL quarterback is that I'm the best. It's just like the Scotty Miller thing. I'm faster than Tyreek Hill. That's how you have to be wired. So Russell Wilson thinks he's better than Tom Brady. He has to think that to achieve at a high level. So if he genuinely believes that, Peter, it has to be tormenting him of the thing that Russell Wilson is stuck with one of 9 years into his career.
Mike, if you sort of extrapolate this story what would be fair market value for Russell Wilson? And I thought about that a lot this week. And I keep hearing people say when Deshaun Watson trade offers get thrown out, oh my God, that's too much. Like I said somewhere a couple of weeks ago, if it does come to this, I'd trade your existing quarterback plus 4 ones for Deshaun Watson. And I was roundly shouted down. But look, this is the point that I would make about that. All right? You have one job as an NFL franchise. You know what that job is? It's not to hire a great coach, not to hire a great GM. It's to find a franchise quarterback. Okay? You will have a chance if you have a franchise quarterback. If you don't, you could very well be the New England Patriots of 2020. You could be a lot of coaches in NFL history who have a crap quarterback situation or maybe not enough talent, and you're just not good enough. And that is why I'll work on all the other stuff. We'll make all the other stuff. We'll get it all to work, okay? But give me the franchise quarterback. And that's why if you said to me, you have no ones until 2025, and your incumbent quarterback, let's say Sam Darnold, is gone. You have no ones. Your next 4 ones are gone. All right. And with the Jets, it's different because they got 2 this year, and obviously two next year. But what I'm saying is 4 ones plus Sam Darnold. If I'm the Jets, I do it in an absolute heartbeat for a very simple reason. You now have solved the problem that has faced your franchise since Broadway Joe Namath was on the cover of Sports Illustrated.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's been 50 years since the Jets have had that quarterback and had that kind of level of achievement. And I think the Jets would make sense if that's something that Robert Saleh, who has extensive experience defending against Russell Wilson, would want to do. I mean, that's part of what we find out if the Seahawks start taking these calls seriously. We found out fairly quickly what the rest of the NFL thinks of Matthew Stafford. What does the rest of the NFL think of Russell Wilson? Is he indeed being held back by the Seattle organization? Can you run the offense through him and get a Patrick Mahomes level of achievement out of him on a regular basis if you make him the centerpiece of your offense? He surely believes that. Now, 2020 was kind of strange because it started as let Russ cook, and then the defense has caught up with the offense. So was it Brian Schottenheimer? Was it Pete Carroll? Was it Russell Wilson? You almost won't be able to tell until you see Russell Wilson somewhere else, where he is the guy through whom the offense runs. But, Peter, whether it's 3 first-round picks, whether it's 4, whatever it takes, and maybe Sam Darnold for Russell Wilson plus multiple first-round draft picks would get it done. But if it's moving in that direction, that is a couple of years ago, before Russell got his latest contract that paid him market value of $35 million a year, he was linked to the New York Giants. And there's that New York connection with his wife, Ciara, who maybe would like to be in a market like that. Maybe Russell would thrive in a market like that. He's so good with the media. He's in Seattle, which kind of gets forgotten in the greater NFL scheme of things. It makes a ton of sense for Russell Wilson to be in New York, and it makes a ton of sense for the Jets to consider it. And that would be the thing that finally would sell out the stadium, assuming that fans will be back this year, sell the PSLs, do all the things the Jets have struggled to do in MetLife Stadium since they entered it with the Giants a decade ago.
Mike, I'm going to take just a slight left turn here, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about what Russell Wilson must be feeling. I want to take you to very late in the second quarter in the Super Bowl. Tyrann Mathieu interferes with Mike Evans in the end zone, and the ball goes to the 1-yard line. And whether or not you agree with the interference, which I do think it was interference, but they're at the 1-yard line, Brady's at the line of scrimmage, and he's calling out the play, and all of a sudden, timeout. Kansas City takes a timeout to discuss exactly what's going on. At that moment, great camera work by CBS right here, because they capture Tom Brady waving something off from the sidelines, and I couldn't tell because Jim Nantz and Tony Romo didn't talk about it. but they're waving it off. And so I made a call yesterday, and I asked what was going on when Brady was saying basically, no. And he held up 5. He held up his hands. 5. Okie 5. And so I found out what happened. Byron Leftwich was going to call a different play because this is spy versus spy, Mike. And this is the defense basically changing what it's doing once it sees what Tampa's going to do. And so at that moment, Leftwich starts to call a play into Brady's helmet, I think. He starts to call a play into Brady's helmet, and Brady goes, no. Same. I think he said same. And so the only reason I bring that up now is because that was the play that Tom Brady fired that BB into Antonio Brown's gut, where he does the little move around Tyrann Mathieu, touchdown. Now it's 21-6 at halftime, totally different game. I only bring that up because I assume that any quarterback in the NFL who's watching that play said, my God, one of the big plays of your season. You're at the 1-yard line. You can get another touchdown. And you know what happened? Tom Brady told the coaches, I got this. You guys, we're running the play that was called before. And they ran the play, and it was a touchdown. And this is not deep and dark. It is simply sometimes a quarterback knows exactly what he should be doing on the field. And if Russell Wilson saw that, and I bet he did, if Russell Wilson saw that, he's got to be thinking, man, look at the power that Tom Brady has, and he's out there winning a Super Bowl.
Now, I'm not trying to gratuitously pull another quarterback into this conversation, but as you're explaining that, I'm thinking of Aaron Rodgers with that 4th and goal from the 8 in the NFC Championship
Oh, that's
game,
great, Mike.
He just accepted the fact that out comes the field goal team, and there's not a damn thing I can do about it. And what freedom Tom Brady has, and whether it's Wilson, whether it's Rodgers, these guys who are stuck at one Super Bowl win, and they're seeing Tom Brady piling them up, and Tom Brady now empowered by the Buccaneers to basically take over the offense and do what he sees fit and bring in guys he wants to be there. That's the kind of thing that I think is going to drive both Rodgers and Wilson crazy. This Jets thing has me percolating, Peter, because I'll tell you this. The idea of Russell Wilson moving on from the Seahawks is not new. And I've mentioned it from time to time, and Seahawks fans initially have shouted me down, and I haven't pushed it as hard as I could have based on what I'd been hearing. But the one team that I always hear when it relates to Russell Wilson and a potential trade is the Dallas Cowboys. But now you got me thinking about the Jets, because as Matt Casey mentioned in my ear after we talked about the Jets a minute ago, great way for the Seahawks and the Jets to do a transaction that would entail the Jamal Adams first-round pick going back to Seattle. Hey, we got 2 first-round picks for a guy who didn't really want to be here. Let's just call it this. Let's call it Jamal Adams plus a first-round pick or 2 for Russell Wilson. We would do that trade in a heartbeat. Absolutely, we would have done that trade in a heartbeat. And so let's put a package together premised on these extra picks that we got. It's not quite exactly that,
though, Mike. It isn't quite exactly that, because think of it. It would have to be Sam Darnold plus, plus basically Jamal Adams, and you'd have to, I would think, you'd have to give at least 2 1s in this scenario, because if you are giving Seattle back its picks, you're basically giving them back 2 mid to late round 1s, okay? But you're also giving them the 2nd pick in the draft.
Right.
So in an odd way, if they got Sam Darnold, can you imagine what they would do with that 2nd pick in the draft? I'll bet you $100 that John Schneider would take that tackle from Oregon. And then finally the tackle who Russell Wilson was looking for 9 years would show up the day after he left the building. And it would just be kind of a weird irony.
And think about that package from the Seahawks' perspective. If you get offered Sam Darnold, the 2nd overall pick, and the 2 first-round picks that you sent for Jamal Adams, and And if the Jets have to throw in a fourth one to make it happen, so be it. Let's say it's basically Jamal Adams, Sam Darnold, and 2 first-round picks, including the second overall pick. How in the hell would the Seahawks say no to that? And I'm starting to think maybe that's too much for the Jets to give up. But again, what they've done is they've spun their wheels for the last 50 years looking for another franchise quarterback, and they haven't been able to find one. So if I'm the Jets, I seriously would consider making that kind of offer, and it becomes borderline offer the Seahawks can't refuse, Peter.
I don't know if the Seahawks would start to think at that point, but I also know this, Mike. If I were Joe Douglas, as good as Russell Wilson is, I'd rather have a quarterback who's 7 years younger. And so that offer first is going to the Houston Texans if it hasn't already gone there.
Well, here's the other side of it, too. Russell Wilson, through his agent, Mark Rodgers, who has one NFL client and always drives a hard bargain, you're going to have to pay Russell Wilson much more than what Deshaun Watson is currently making. Russell Wilson is going to try to get top of market money. He's gotten 2 prior times top of market money, close to it. He was just behind Aaron Rodgers when he did his first 4-year extension. He became the highest paid player in NFL history when he got his most recent one at $35 million a year in new money. Now you got Patrick Mahomes at $45. That's part of what you're going to have to factor into this if you're the Jets. You're going to have to pay Russell Wilson, and his agent is going to push you very hard to do it. He comes through the door making a mere $19 million in salary for this year. So the contract itself, not a difficult thing for a new team to take on. What's difficult and what's challenging is the contract you're going to buy the next time around. And when is the next time around? Is it this year? Is it next year? Is it the year after? Those are things that whoever would trade for Russell Wilson needs to consider as well, because you're swapping those low-cost first-round picks for a guy that's going to cost you top-of-market money.
But you know what I would do, Mike, in this particular case, if I'm Mark Rodgers and I'm Russell Wilson? I would say, listen, let's just have a little, an honorable agreement. You can't sign anything about this or anything. There just has to be the understanding that when the salary cap kicks over $200 million, we got to redo my contract. That would, in my opinion, be a logical way to do it. Because I would not want to show up in Florio Park, New Jersey, eating up half of the gigantic amount of cap space that the Jets are going to have. I wouldn't want to show up doing that, because that prevents you from surrounding Russell Wilson with great players, or better players, I should say.
Or do the thing that I've been arguing for years now. The Jets refused to do it with Darrelle Revis in 2010. Guarantee Russell Wilson a percentage of the cap, period. Whatever it is, 17%, 16.2, whatever it is, that's what he gets every year. So there always is that remaining 84 cents on the dollar. Again, whatever they decide is going to be the number. That's what's there to put the team around him. And part of it, too, look, you give up all that stuff for Russell Wilson, your salary expectation, you're getting the guy who wants to be the Tom Brady, who waves off the play, who brings in the guys he wants. Otherwise, you just end up in the same spot the Seahawks are in, and before you know it, Russell Wilson's going to be on Dan Patrick talking about the concerns he has with his current team.
Yeah, and Mike, I'll tell you what, I think this is going to end with Russell Wilson staying in Seattle. But I do think there's going to be several meetings of the minds. And, curiously absent in this, honestly, is ownership. Where is Jody Allen in this? I understand that she's reticent, that she's a private person. I get it. But when you own an NFL team, it's not like owning a private business. It's not like owning a hardware store. You are in the spotlight. And again, look, I don't know what her relationship with Wilson is, but where is she? She should be, starting to have some conversations about this, because the most valuable asset in her empire, basically sporting empire, is Russell Wilson. And he apparently is not happy. So do something about it. Step forward. Do something. Be involved. I don't know. Those are the things I'm thinking about, Mike, that the organization has to be involved. You can't just always say, hey, John Schneider, fix this. Let's let the organization go at it too.
By all appearances, Peter, and I've been trying to get to the bottom of that, because for as quiet and understated and unassuming as Paul Allen was, his sister is even more of the same. She's nowhere to be seen. She's nowhere to be found. This is all Pete Carroll. That's the impression. This is Pete's call. Whatever Pete wants to do, that's what it's going to be. And who knows? Look, Peter, I initially thought when this all came up that next year is when it all comes to a head. That the cap charge pre-June 1 for a trade, $39 million in dead money for the Seahawks, they're not going to entertain that. Now you could do the trade June 2 and make it 13 this year and 26 next year, and with no offseason program, what's he really missing? So I think if it does happen, it would be something that becomes official on or after June 2. But even then, are you ready to do it this year? Do you want to try to fix it? Do you want to give it a year and see if it works with Shane Waldron? Do you want to let Russ be involved with free agency in the draft? A lot of this depends on what the Seahawks choose to do. And all we've heard the past 3 days as it relates to the Seahawks is the report from Dan Patrick that the Seahawks aren't happy with Russell Wilson. Okay, fine, they're not happy. What does that mean? Does that mean they're at a point of no return? Or does that mean they're going to hash it out and they're going to figure out how to make it work for at least one more year, maybe 2, maybe 3, maybe more?
And that's what nobody knows right now. But I think that unless some team like the Jets gets very aggressive in this, I think that at some point Schneider and Pete Carroll are going to try to address some of Wilson's concerns, even though, even though they are very much, this is not the way that John Schneider has ever operated in his career. And I think he has to determine, is it worth it to try to make peace, to change at this point in his, what has been a very successful NFL career? Is he willing to change the way he does things somewhat, to accommodate his quarterback? And we'll see. I really don't know. This is an interesting story, Mike. They may just say, hey, listen, shut up and go to work. They may do that. Who knows? We'll see. But it doesn't strike me that Pete Carroll, who is always hey, don't worry, be happy. Hey, we're all one big happy family, blah, 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 blah. That, he was always able to bury the rancor, the anger of Marshawn Lynch and the team divisiveness of Marshawn Lynch. He was always able to push that to the side. But I don't know that this is going to be the same deal. This is the leader of your franchise, not some petulant counterculture guy who really, it's not that he wasn't important to the team. He was very important. But he's not the quarterback of the team either.
Like Deshaun Watson, and for that matter, Tom Brady, Russell Wilson has a no-trade clause in his contract, which gives him the ability to veto any potential trade that the Seahawks would try to engineer if he doesn't want to go to, say, for example, Jacksonville. I'm fascinated by the possibility of the Jaguars saying, we'll give you the Trevor Lawrence pick and we'll take Russell Wilson. Would Russell Wilson say, I'll take Jacksonville? Maybe he would, maybe he wouldn't. But the folks at PointsBet put together the odds earlier this week for the destination, if not Seattle. The Jets aren't on the board. Maybe they should be.
How are the Jets not on the board?
I don't know. Maybe
insane. That's insane.
Maybe that's a bet we need to place. But the Las Vegas Raiders currently at the top at plus 450. I don't know about that one. Again, I have heard.
I guess PointsBet is located in Las Vegas.
I've heard over and over again the Dallas Cowboys.
Mike Mayock is telling everybody, we're not trading Carr. Period. Stop. I mean, this is a silly graphic.
Well,
silly.
And I've heard that the Raiders aren't trading Derek Carr, but I think with John Gruden, you can never rule out anything. And if there would be an opportunity to get Russell Wilson.
I wouldn't put him number one on the list is all I'm saying.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you. And I'm surprised the Jets aren't on there, and maybe the Jets should be on there. You've sold me on the Jets. The question is, would Russell Wilson be sold on the Jets? And ultimately, look, here's the thing that we don't know. We don't know what Robert Saleh privately thinks of Russell Wilson from the 2 or 3 times per year that he's had to come up with a defense. And how do you handle Russell Wilson? How much does he compare to Patrick Mahomes, to Tom Brady? How much are you spending your time scared to death at night when you're trying to fall asleep?
But the question is, Mike, that isn't the question.
About Russell Wilson.
That's not the question. You know, whether you might like Patrick Mahomes better than Russell Wilson is totally, or any of these other quarterbacks. That doesn't matter. The question is, do you like Justin Fields better than Russell Wilson? Yep. You know, do you like Sam Darnold better than Russell Wilson? That's the issue. And the issue is, first of all, I can't believe that Robert Saleh would not very much aggressively want to go after Russell Wilson. I mean, look, they have had some great games over the years, and Russell Wilson's won a lot of those great games over the years. So I'd be very surprised if Saleh wouldn't be saying to Joe Douglas, go get him if it was possible.
And I think Saleh was in Seattle at one point along the way, too, so he's had access to Russell Wilson at practice.
In their Super Bowl
behind
year.
the scenes. Yeah, so he's been there. He's done that. He knows who he's getting. You just have to be all in on the player to the point where you're willing to give up everything you have to give up to get him, and that you're willing to stand in the shoes that it's going to take to be his employer going forward. You're going to be paying him a lot of money, and you got to be willing to give him a seat at the table. Are you willing to do that? Are you willing to empower your quarterback Tom Brady style? Because at the core, that's what this is. This is this dawn of a new age of franchise quarterbacks sparked by Tom Brady's move to Tampa Bay and ability to win a Super Bowl right away. That is increasing the pressure, the anxiety, the stress for guys like Russell Wilson and to a lesser extent Aaron Rodgers. He's keeping his mouth shut, but I'm sure he's watching this too, Peter, because we're seeing what happens when a team says to a quarterback, we are deferring to you, and we're going to let you have influence over how we run our team at a time when all the other teams are stuck in that mindset of, yeah, we want you to kind of behave like a manager among your teammates, but when it's time for the management meeting, you're not invited.
Yeah, I agree with you, Mike. I guess my overriding point in this is that if I was an NFL general manager or I was running an NFL franchise and my quarterback was a C- quarterback or whatever you would call Sam Darnold right now, not saying that it's his fault, okay, but his performance is not great. And if that was my situation, and there was even a whiff in the air that I could get a great quarterback on my team, I'd do exactly what the New York Giants did way back in, I forget when it was, maybe around 1968 or something, when they traded 2 1s and 2 2s for Fran Tarkenton. And he wasn't at the level of, say, a Russell Wilson or a Deshaun Watson. He was a very good pro quarterback. But the Giants didn't have a quarterback, and Fran Tarkenton gave them one for, I think he was there 5 years. Fran Tarkenton gave them a chance to win every Sunday. Russell Wilson would give the New York Jets a chance to win every Sunday while they built their team up, even though they wouldn't have 3 or 4 of the very high picks that they wish they did.
And Peter, coincidentally, yesterday was the 54th anniversary of the day that Fran Tarkenton informed the Vikings he would no longer play for them, laying the foundation for the trade. Even though it was a Norm Van Brocklin, Fran Tarkenton thing, and Norm Van Brocklin had been fired, Tarkenton still didn't want to play for the Vikings, got traded to the Giants, and of course, 6 years after that, got traded back to the Vikings and made it to 3 Super Bowls.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.